Good afternoon, all listeners of Swarajya. It's my pleasure and privilege to introduce the guest today. This is going to be a very special and very unlike any of the Swarajya conversations that we have had before. Uh, we have the unique privilege of a very well-known and a very prominent social media personality. Interestingly, he has maintained anonymity this far, and finally, he's kind of decided to unshackle the anonymity and then kind of join the discourse in his real persona. So, without much ado, let me introduce Vivek. Vivek, welcome to Swarajya. Vivek. Wonderful having you for this conversation. Let me ask you to introduce yourself and your work in social media, and also, what is the driving point for you to come out of the anonymity and, engage with the larger world right now. All yours, Vivek.
Hey, thanks, Prasanna. It's an honor to be on your platform. So we've been connected with each other for a long time, but this is the first time I think we're talking to each other. So it's a privilege to be on Swarajya. So first let's start from the beginning. So my name is Vivek Rajagopal, and I'm a small business owner from Chennai, and yeah, so I've been commenting on various political matters and various intellectual legal matters in my blog, which is realitycheck.wordpress.com. So that's my blog. I've been doing that since 2006. So I've been on social media for quite a long time under that reality check ID. And here I'm delighted to show my face and come out. so, uh, so to start from the beginning, I'm basically by nature a very curious and very deep sort of person, and I've always had a very deep sense of justice and the ability to voice out against it. So if I see something wrong, I have to express it. So in 2006, I started this blog as a way to express my thoughts about various events that were unfolding in public. It was just a hobby, so I wasn't really too tied into it. So I would just do my work, and in my spare time, I would just note down various events and discourses that I see on news and newspapers. I start penning down my thoughts on the blog. So those of you old timers who know, in the 2006, 7, 8, 9, those were the days of the blogs. So
Correct.
we used to have debates and discourses and comments, and it was a very lively time where we there was a free exchange of ideas, and we used to engage at an abstraction that was devoid of hate and was devoid of name calling, abuse, uh, and vile memes and things like that. So we would debate issues, whether it was things like education policy or this corruption scandals, Commonwealth Games, or whatever it was. So we were able to actually talk to our opponents. So whether the if I can characterize myself, I'm actually a man of liberal bent. So I identify mostly with liberal values such as individualism, free speech, and rule of law. So for me, the rule of law is the layer that protects us from rapacious elements that take away our liberty. So we must be able to take an event or an incident and abstract out the essence of that is not particular to that event, and then be able to talk about it. So that was my real thing. I've from 2006 I was on reality check. I've commented on a lot of things, reservations. These were things that are very difficult to talk about, but still, we did manage to have a very decent conversations with the opposing sides, and they also were very polite. So I think Prasanna was also from that age. So, yeah, sort of. It looks like those were some of the golden times. So I still remember my opponents from those days. They would never engage in name calling or the kind of abuse that we see today. So those were the days. So over time, I sort of evolved to talk about education policy. So that became my main thing. So because I was very interested in education policy. So how the schools, because I found that schools and universities, and these were the places where you would find the next generation that will take the country forward. So yeah, so I was very much caught up into this Right to Education Act and analyzing that and various legal and constitutional issues around that. So I still remember my posts on the 93rd constitutional amendment, right? So those were my two posts on that were Google rank number 1 and 3, and it stayed there for 6 months. And you got to wonder that in a democracy, that anonymous blogger who, his take on a constitutional amendment that affects 1/5 of humanity would be on the Google front page. But that's how it was because the establishment journalists would not touch those issues because they were just given to them. So so that was a kind of a wake up call for me that I was really adding some value to the discourse. And yeah, so then I, we kept talking on the blog. So it was just a hobby for me because I'm personally I'm into deep tech. So I'm also, I have a number of varied interests. So I'm not a unidimensional man. I'm not an angry man, or I'm not like someone who would just go and incite riots or something like that. So I'm reasonable and rational and a deep, profound person. So I like to get to the bottom of issues in an abstracted way and not talk about individuals or ad hoc elements. So that's my background actually. So yeah, so I get on further on my blogging. I always enjoy blogging even today. So somewhere along the way, I developed a more a rounded view of what was really the distortions in the Indian society. That was preventing us from getting out of the third world status. So I found there was some certain key what do you call it? There were some certain key glitches in the matrix, if you will. So those needed to be fixed. So if we wanted to move to the next level, so I did a lot of thinking on this. So then I came up with my core right agenda. So it was just a set of six easy to do legislative fixes that would have really removed the sectarian anger and the violence and the abuse and the hatred, and also would have put individualism, rule of law, open data, policy making based on unemotional and impersonal factors that were outcome driven and data driven. So these were the bottom line of the core right agenda. So that was, I think, a contribution that took a long time for me. If I'm not wrong, it came out in 2016. So there was already 10 years
Of
on that
thinking.
of the, yeah, of thinking and discussing. But again, so I enjoyed that. I do during the entire time. Not my business or my family did not suffer at all because this was a type of discourse that I enjoyed because it was at an impersonal and abstract level. So I dealt with ideas. So. Perhaps in another podcast we'll talk about the core right agenda. So it
Oh,
essentially
sure.
has to do with six fixes in the area of education, the right to run schools, right to run temples, removing sectarian factors from budgeting, the right for groups to practice their culture as long as it doesn't did not impinge on others, and so forth. That was the core agenda. So things were going on fine, and then I tried then. Oh, one more thing. Yeah, I've never been a politically affiliated person. Okay, so I'm not a member of BJP or Congress or anything. So, but when Modi came to power, I really thought that my core right agenda would find some kind of traction. So I did try to push it a lot, and unfortunately, there wasn't much movement on it. So yeah, it was around 2018 or 17. Then I took a turn into the Tamil uh,
You know,
domain, if you will.
more narrowly focused on a particular.
Yes. Yeah, so it was not like so I was coming to see various. Oh yeah, before that Twitter. So I'm primarily a blogger even today. But I got introduced to Twitter maybe 2010, but I was not a major user until 2016, 17, something like that. When I came to Twitter, I would encounter some kind of a very odd and unusual, and if you look at it, it was a very diabolical and pre-modern uh, kind of tweets, which would be abusive and very hateful, particularly towards Brahmins, right? And it would be in Tamil, and I am basically I'm a Tamilian, so and I grew up in Madurai, so I'm a hardcore Tamil. So Tamil is not new for me, even though my mentality is you can call it I'm from the English. I like that. I'm going to be honest with you because I find the logical tools and the ability to discourse and the ability to reason things much more well developed. And I was always on that plane. So maybe it was arrogant of me or whatever. I never thought of engaging in a lower plane of discourse. But yeah, during my entry into Tamil land, I was encountering these tweets, which would be very odd. It would be, and they would seem to be coming from unknown sources, but they would be everywhere. So it's a lot of low quality and low voices, but a lot of them. So they create a buzz, and that was like the asariri, they call it Tamil, which is like an
Hmm.
echo. That echo is always present. So I still I persisted and I would engage with the more higher abstract issues, but this would never go away because I'm by nature a curious person and I really wanted to see what this was about. Then I started watching some YouTube videos which would float on my TL timeline, Twitter timeline, which would be very violent. It's incredible the type of violence and canards and the harmful tropes and the stereotypes that were being spread on YouTube by very well trained and very persistent and extremely productive and valuable speakers. And I could see the effect that it was having on the Tamil people. All right, so this was 2017 and 18, maybe something like that. So, but even then, I maintained a sort of interest. I thought at some point I would get the core agenda done, even after 2019. So I still persisted with some of my national issues. So I would fight with friends from Maharashtra and Andhra and all these guys. So trying to sell my core vision. But over time, that my interest in that was really waning, if you
Hmm.
will.
Okay.
So my interest was more towards the home front, where I found these kind of attitudes, which were based on hatred, stereotypes, spreading canards, harmful tropes, and was actually not as unpopular as you would expect in a civilized society. So I found that there were a significant number of very high profile, educated, and everyday people who would not hesitate to engage with these tropes. And if not, they would share it or create it themselves. So
Correct.
that is very unusual for a society. And it doesn't come out. So in Twitter you have the anonymity, right? So
Correct.
it has a good side and a bad side. So the good side is people are able to express what they really think. So I really I've grown up, I've never had now I'm open, I don't identify myself as a Brahmin or anything, but I realized that is not my choice to make. That choice has already been made for me.
Absolutely.
So there was no going denying that or fighting that. So my friends, I have friends from every strata and every society. I'm actually a fun guy with a lot of different hobbies, and I do mix with a lot of people at all levels. So I help a lot of underprivileged. So I don't want to just give a laundry list to Tom, blow my own horn or whatever. So, but I never encountered these in real life. But I found that intense propaganda, right? Intense propaganda that was being pushed by Dravidian channels on YouTube were really having an impact on the society itself. So these propaganda were not countered by any moderate voice. So one of the things that I found in the Tamil Chandu, we call it Tamil Ali, Chandu, was the total absence of any moderating voice. So there's not a single person who would step in and say, "Guys, this is too much. Let's stop here." That checking was not. I have never seen to this day. So I have shared a ton of evidence of my research, which I will speak about. But I mean, I was yet to see anyone step in and say, guys, this is nasty, this is too much, uh, that you would expect, right?
Correct.
Uh, so that in some way that was deeply disturbing to me. So in another way, it piqued my curiosity. So I
Wait,
need.
I'll just sorry for quick interjection. So the you took us through your blogging journey. From a free thinking libertarian to your focus on core to probably your day to day fights and exchanges with the well organized quote unquote the Dravidian forces. My question to you at this point of time is that at least I think in the last 3 to 4 months, you've seen a spate of very arbitrary arrests that have happened in Tamil Nadu, and the most recent and disturbing one is of a very famous and a very fairly well regarded, and I would call it a very a non-controversial publisher like Badri was also arrested on a very and of course the courts came down hard as well on that. So given this is the kind of climate that is prevailing in the state now, at this juncture you're taking a very this call to kind of unshackle or anonymity. Is there like, did you kind of really think through and and what, how did you arrive at this decision, if I might ask? I mean, you could reveal to whatever extent that you think you would be comfortable with, but I just want to understand, because it's a very hostile milieu. I mean, ideologically hostile is understandable, but it's also like legal minefield at this point of time, even sympathetic commentators to the government suggesting that even this is being done without even the government, the higher ups in the government knowing. So it's like random folks doing their thing. So how do you see your decision in light of this, Vivek?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I've been struggling with this for a while. So up until I was discussing with the English and abstracted issues like such as the various right to education, right to information, and all these abstract ideas in English, the legal and the at the conceptual level, right? I was quite comfortable being. It didn't matter for me being unknown or not. I just didn't take the effort to reveal myself because I never said anything. That's really a objection, and nobody really bothered. Now, but coming into the Tamil, the Dravidian material had, I have to say, had a psychological impact on me. So that's the truth. So when you start reading this material, so it's material. It's really a dark place, dark thing, right? So then I've been thinking about what is this? Should I go deeper and deeper? But I'm by nature somebody who likes to go deeper. so and so I started. Then Corona was a turning point actually. So when I was at home and I had a little bit of extra time, and I started reading all the original source material of in Tamil actually of the entire Dravidian corpus. So, for example, the Kudiyarasu dump. So there are from nearly 1920s to 1939, I think. So there was a huge dump of material. So I read the entire material. Then I read various speeches and the primary source material, right? And started watching some videos that were being shared actively by various Dravidian handles attacking Brahmins and all that. So, I went deeper and deeper. I started reading, seeing whether there was anything I was missing, whether there was some element of justice or some element of good faith or something that I was missing. So I started engaging in discourse. So to engage in discourse, I had to go in Tamil idioms. I can't really talk in the abstract idioms of English and try to get information. So I engaged many Tamil handles politely. I'm always very quite polite. So despite the intense provocation, uh, which many have admired me for that. So yeah, that's something I developed because for me, I didn't want to miss something that was very obviously was valid, and there are some valid points which I will probably talk in a future podcast. So Dravidianism is has one or two uh, valid points that can be easily addressed by negotiation and reasoned discourse. But what they do is they take those one or two valid demands, and they use that as a vehicle for hate propaganda. Okay, so that's something that we can discuss. So it's not my place
So,
to say that.
just to, since you've done like, enormous primary research into the primary sources, from their publication, pamphlets, public speeches, and all, I know the amount of effort that would have gone into it. Uh, by way of introduction, we might have listeners across India as well. So, what are the things that, I mean, a lot of people will have a conventional understanding of the Dravidian movement and all that. So, what do you think? I mean, for a want of a better word, the ugly underside or something of the Dravidian discourse that you think is that kind of, doesn't get the kind of scrutiny or something like that. What do you think that, like, say somebody who only has a cursory understanding should probably apply their mind on this particular movement? I mean, also you could talk about the uniqueness of this movement compared to other, there are populist movements and populist movements, but what is it makes it a kind of a unique beast, so as to speak, if you could fill in here.
Okay, yeah. If you don't mind, I'll just complete the previous question
Yeah,
about
sure,
that.
sure.
So, and then we'll come to this. So, yeah, regarding this, yeah. So I went deeper and deeper into the dark side, right? So then you start developing the split personality. Like you know a lot of dark things, but then you have to like, and then you keep it inside you, like, and you sort of you cannot reveal it to anyone, because some of the books and material that I have researched, for example, the very vile and very prurient and sometimes even very pornographic or very explicit cartoons, right? That depict Brahmins that were circulated, that are being circulated everywhere. Now, those are not things that I can share at home, or some of the books, the book covers, some of the content in the book. I cannot really show others, or because that would be very disturbing for a person who's not like me, who's not a discourse analyst, who's not. I'm already immune because I've crossed that level. So it's like a video game. So I'm already at level. So 10 levels, I'm already at level 8. So I'm not going to be spooked. But someone who is at level 1, if they're exposed to these books, they get really upset. So I kept it all within myself, and that had an impact on me. So I had a fun public persona. So I do a lot of fun activities, and I'm in some groups. So I started withdrawing from some of those groups, or I was not. I became less and less socially available because I could not maintain this these two personas. On one side, had no problem engaging with decent and abstracted issues. On the other hand, you have very personal and very guttural and very uh, uh, visceral issues that I had to do both. So I started developing a split problem. So I started withdrawing, and I attribute that to my anonymity, because when you have the bright and dark, like then you have to integrate it into one person, right? So this is that Jungian policy philosophy, the dark. So you have to integrate your darkness with one, like that. So it's a very bad idea to keep two people like separately. So that's what. So that I attribute that thing to my anonymity, right? So that was not having a good impact on my usual friendly and modern and fun person who I really am. But at the same time, my curious side made sure that I had to listen, and I had to get deeper and deeper to the bottom of this, because otherwise, I'm just like giving up. I'm not really uh, doing what I really want to do, which is to explore what's going on. So yeah, so this I've been thinking about sharing this anonymity for a while. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage, to be honest, and that's where my introduction to Jordan Peterson, which is actually a life changing experience for me during the Corona. I attributed to him. So his speeches on courage, right, is was really a changer for me. That there are some opportunities that will come along, very few of them, where you actually can take the courageous stand, right? And you have to grab them. And yeah, if it is the case that I'm prosecuted or hurt, which I don't rule out, because based on the recent uh, events, yeah, there is a lot of price to be paid. But then people, I count on the civil society to just reflect on what's going on. So like a person who's just I'm talking so much. What is at the end of this? I'm just voicing what is my legal speech. So this is just I'm just expressing myself and by of legally valid and ideas, right? So I don't have any illegal ideas. I'm just expressing legal ideas. So if a state is going to prevent that and browbeat persons like me, then we really have to ought to reflect on that ideology or that party or that political expression of that ideology, whether that is actually the problem that's preventing us from forming a modern country and going into first world
Right.
status, right? So yeah, so if I look, I mean, at the end of the day, if the police, or the state is using its enormous power, they are going to find they can if they want they can find me. So I just like it. I have combined with my own personal issue with the split persona, where I've exposed to a lot of dark stuff, and I had to pretend not to know those things in social settings. So that was nothing but being disingenuous, disingenuous means that you pretend to know less than what you really know. So I had to like sometimes act dumb, that as if I
Mhm.
don't know about all these things. So yeah, those have impact on you. So hopefully by going public, I can put an end to this. Yeah, if there's a price to pay, then I count on the support of people like you and all right-thinking people to come out and voice support that we have to elevate the discourse out of this, make issues more abstract, less identity-based, and let's talk about issues. Let's not talk about people and
Correct.
let's put an end to this abuse and this volatile situation. So this is something that that's basic, and I'm proud to find that so Rajya is willing to host me and to express this view. So yeah, that was the anonymity part. The second part was what do other people need to know about this Dravidian? So that's a longer answer. So okay, as I said, so Dravidian has there are aspects of Dravidian demands that are reasonable. Okay, one of the most reasonable demands is a search for an equality status in some of the ritual functions. Okay, so I sort of support that, but
Mm.
that is really something that can be solved with good faith and civilized debate. So that really got me. That's not something that's unsolvable. So if you really come forward with the proper request, and then the other all sides come together, we can figure something out. So there is a history of that. We'll talk about in another podcast. But what is really unique is there's the discourse is all in Tamil. Okay, that's number one. So other states or other countries or speakers cannot really get an insight into what is actually being communicated. So what is being communicated is not what is said on the surface. So if you ask them, what is it that you really want, they would say, we want self-respect, women's rights, and social justice, maybe. So these are things
Yeah.
that everybody wants. So there's these are platitudes, right? So these are I want those. Like, so that there's something more than that. So if you then you start to tune in to the Tamil side. So it's like two faces, like this face and this face. So then this is the face that outside. Here, what they say is completely not aligned with what the stated goals are. Right. So nobody's against women rights, right? Penurume. So who would be so to do that? What they do is they rely on tropes and some past injustices, right? That to women, and they regurgitate those things at this point. And the purpose of all of this is to build a hostility, particularly towards the Tamil Brahmin community. Okay, I'm going to be open about it. So they would. I don't want to say those words because those are very, let's say, abusive and.
Derogatory.
But I have documented it on my platform. So. So that is a sort of and I'm not going to say the whole society says that, but the majority of society is accepting it somehow, or at least is not
Yeah,
against it.
yeah,
So
Vivek. Sorry, just at this point, that's what I mean, I'm also personally curious, actually, and like probably I want to kind of uh, ch- uh, pick up some insights from you. So uh, see, like unlike say anti-Semitism in the West, which had a definite theological sanction and as a as a long history. Dravidianism is like how recent is it, and because I'm also conflicted whether either does it have popular resonance with the people, or some kind of a subliminal acceptance, or is it just like people being indifferent to it and that allows them to grow. So I would like to understand from you what is the attitude of the, I would say, the non-ideological Tamil society to Dravidam. Is it like, is it one of silence by complicity, or by they agree with the parts of it, or it's just like indifferent actually? So what's your sense?
okay. Yeah, sorry, the audio wasn't very clear, but I think I got the question. So yeah, there are. First of all, are there parallels with anti-Semitism? So one thing I don't like to do is to use the word Holocaust or genocide. Okay, so I think those are loaded words and they have a
Yeah.
particular meaning, and I don't think we should use those words here. But anti-Semitism is not just it's an attitude, it's a technique, it's a propaganda technique, right? So there are there parallels? Plenty. So first of all, there are uh, original sources where they refer to the Jewish integration issues with the Gentiles, and they made the same comparisons with the Tamil Brahmins with the Dravidian majority, right? So that is what that's one of the things, and there are some other things that are sort of profound. We'll talk about some other time, but one of the there are a couple of things that you can see. There are red flags, right? Those are red flags. One of the red flag that I like is the case of the bipolar stereotype. All right. So let me explain what it is. So a bipolar stereotype is you accuse someone of X and the opposite of X at the same time. So that when you do that, right, it means that they're not really interested in anything but to blame X. To give you an example, so one of the things they say is uh, Brahmins have absolutely no power. We are they're nowhere in the picture. There are no MLAs, or they are completely uprooted, powerless. So, and they accuse them of being hugely powerful, controlling the press, controlling the judiciary, controlling the
Entertainment.
ministers. So they accuse you of being powerless and super powerful, uber powerful at the same time. So you just that's just one example. Another one is accusing them of being cowardly and super brave at the same time, right? So you can be one of the examples was uh, Papa and Nike, ಧೈರ್ಯ ಹಂಗೇನೋ ಒಂದಿತ್ತು. This was like, how did the Brahmin dog get so much courage?
Correct.
So this is from a Rajya Sabha MP, right? So this is so when you're dealing with abstract issues, for example, like I was doing in with the Delhi stuff, right? So that's one thing. Whether you're arguing whether Section 13 of the Right to Education Act is good or not. Okay, I can do that. But if someone comes up to you and asks you a question, Papa Naik ಧೈರ್ಯ vandache. So where did you Brahmin dog get this courage? So that is a different issue. Those are different. Those are on different planes. So I want to highlight that the type of discourse that is seen here is of a qualitatively different uh, discourse than you see in other states or India or anywhere in the world. So at the same time, you cannot ignore that type of question, right? Because they if you ignore it, they take it to the masses, right, through the propaganda network. So it just spreads like that. So since there is no civil society check in Tamil Nadu, like ordinary Tamils who don't actually subscribe to this type of baiting and this type of hatred, so they don't step forward and dissociate themselves. I mean, dissociate themselves from this. So the masses are able to get this message, and yeah, so some of them buy it, some of them don't, but enough buy it. So that's the problem. So these are the things. Uh, so that's one thing. The second part was now I forget the question.
No, I just wanted to ask that anti-Semitism has a theological basis in, say,
Ah, yes,
Europe,
yes, yes.
but
Yes, yeah, correct.
what is
So,
it about in Tamil
yeah, there is
society?
no,
Understanding
there is
this.
no, it's completely, see, this is the invention. So, I started reading Sartre, so he has an essay called Etiology of Evil. So, that's an excellent essay, and that's my pinned tweet. I want people to
Correct.
read it. So if it's so anti-Semitism, yes, in Europe has a very long theological basis. They have a D side, DEI side. D means God. So God killers. They have that D
Correct.
side blame on them. Then the tropes like the blood libel date back to very long history of that. But it's exact opposite in Tamil land because the Brahmins have been here for a very very long time, and the evidence is probably from the beginning of the historical period, and they've been sort of well respected, and they've always been around. And I don't think there's been no recorded major accusations or anything for them. They've contributed to the Tamil religious
Literature.
corpus, yeah, the Tevarams and all that. So there is no even up until 18 mid 1800s. So you start reading Uvesa's autobiography. So what is seen there is sort of if not a born homie, there is a certain friendliness and ability to come together and solve the issues, which was at that time the issue was to retrieve the Tamil Sangam corpus. So that was a project where I think Brahmins and non-Brahmins, I hate to use the word non-Brahmin by the way, because it sort of reinforces the Dravidian idea
Still,
to other the Brahmins. So I just don't, maybe I should use the word Dravidian to refer to that, which so the Tamil Brahmins and the others, right? So they were able to come together to solve something glorious, which was a retrieval and publication. I didn't sense any acrimony during that period, and so these were all well-educated communities. So there was, and certainly in terms of wealth and resources, I don't think any of the Dravidian upper castes were deprived or disadvantaged in any way, sort of form. So they were practically ruling. So yeah, so the chain of events, particularly pertaining to modernity. So modernity was sort of injected, which means that rule of law was introduced into this land by this court system, and then you had people having secular jobs, that didn't rely on farm output or farm labor. So maybe those things caused a little strife, but and so it was completely invented. So they invented this anti-Brahmin, I should say anti-Tamil Brahmin. Okay, so that's something I'm very particular about because it is inside the Tamil Nadu. So Dravidians consider the 4 or 5 states as their land, but this phenomenon is unique to Tamil lands. All right, so I'm going to say that so that's Tamil Brahmin is the target here. So so that was completely invented. So this proves that you can invent a type of anti-Semitism based purely on propaganda, and if you keep repeating it, there needs to be no truth or logic or anything to it. So if you keep repeating a set of canards and reinforcing it with various techniques of propaganda, publicity, PR, to be a good publicist, right, is to uh, sort of repeat this again and again until it takes hold. And once it takes hold in one generation, they transmit it to the next generation. And all you have to do is supply more and more material. So in Sartre's Etiology of Evil, he says that if there is no Brahmin, they will invent one, right? So if there is no Brahmin that matches their stereotype, for example, the publisher who was arrested, right, unjustly, is not a stereotypical. So he's a very very liberal and very fun and very knowledgeable, well-read and deep person. So and you can use free speech means you can use idioms, right? You can use idioms and metaphors to describe certain things. So you don't have to like restrict them to be dry. So if you use a metaphor, so those kind of things are not really illegal. So they manufacture something like that. So if you, I'm going to stop right here. So one thing was, I'm not saying that all Brahmins are saints. That's not the issue here. All right. So there you can always find a few. in any community who are or completely outside the pale, who would be who would have views of the world that are completely outdated. So, hello, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But if there are no people like that, if there are no like zero people like that, it's very easy to just go out and search harder and harder until you find one who is like that.
correct.
So you can see that in the way they scour the YouTube videos of various religious discourses, just to take some lines out of context, or just to or to find somebody who really is having these type of views, and they put an enormous effort. So what I've admired about these some of these accounts are the how passionate they are to do this. So they would. It's incredible that would you and I spend literally thousands of hours of our time, of a precious time, where we with the families and of fun activities, to do this kind of work. So they're very passionate about this, and this is driven by a type of zealotry that's embedded in this propaganda network. So that's my answer to that. So you can
Yeah,
invent something like this, even though it doesn't have a religious sanction, based purely on
right.
propaganda techniques and repetition. You can just invent anything, and this is something that the rest of India and the rest should think about. That just because there are no major theological foundations of hatred in the Hindu tradition, it doesn't mean that it cannot be invented.
Correct.
But it needs a lot of time. Uh,
That Vivek, that logically kind of we can leap into the next question that I had in mind. Actually, so in a way, you've kind of beautifully articulated the uniqueness of this ideology and how it's almost invented by relentless propaganda and extreme amplification and almost the passion and the zeal that you spoke about. Like my question is that one of the reasons that probably rest of India doesn't kind of get at the uh, vileness of it at times, at least the vileness of the extreme elements in the Dravidian movement. You think like it's just because this kind of a movement can't be, or ideology cannot be replicated in any other Indian state or something like that, or you see the danger that it could happen elsewhere as well. So, what's your perspective? Is it like something about the uniqueness of the Tamil land? I mean, the Tamil exceptionalism that feeds this and and this ideology flourishes, or you think it could just have cross country applicability?
yeah, first thing is we have to be extremely vigilant, right?
Yeah,
So you have to understand. So one of the things about analyzing something like this is to first put in a lot of effort to understand what the techniques are and what they are about, and also understand your own responses to those
correct,
type of techniques. So what happens if you don't have that kind of deep understanding is you react to provocations, right? So they will provoke you into saying some things, or they may provoke you into doing sharing some abusing them in return or something like that. All right. So those are techniques that you need to learn to spot. So studying the method is the key thing. So that's why my Twitter I call myself discourse analyst. So I analyze because there is no see. It's not like Marxism, right? Marxism has books, has a very solid book intellectual foundation. So you can just
correct,
deconstruct or work on that book. You can
correct,
review that book. But here it's not like that. The books are themselves nothing but a collection of a cauldron of hate and canards
correct,
that don't actually articulate anything really concrete. So you can't really take down the book. So it's a discourse that matters. So what people are continuously
correct.
speaking, right, and the techniques they use to elicit a type of response from you. So these are some of the things you have to watch out for. One other sign you watch out for is stereotyping of any group. Okay, if you look at my history, I don't bait minorities. In fact, I understand why they might need some protections from
Any
mythic.
majoritarian impulses?
Yeah, so they have some institutions. I've praised particularly Catholic schools and for the discipline and things. So I have not. I don't really go into that type of work. My one warning sign that other societies should notice is the stereotyping of groups. Okay, so if you say all X or Y are some kind of a nefarious or some are criminals, right? All people with X surname or X dressing code or X traits have some kind of uh, have some kind of a negative thing about them, right? So these are patterns that you must identify, which is why a recent case I've been very I put some tweets on that. I was arguing with some lawyers also. So when you start stereotyping that like that, even that actually is a sign that you are really something off, because you don't actually see in the US how come all X have this attribute, that that could be a name or a color or a race or whatever it is. So those are some of the things here. So that is extremely common in Tamil
Right.
discourse. So you have Oodal Papati or something like that, right? So it's not just like corrupt ladies, like corrupt Brahmin derogatory lady.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
That's the translation. So they sort of like extend individual
Failures into
foibles or failures
failures into a
to
group.
a group. So whenever you see that pattern in come to the discourse, you know that you got to watch out. Wait, stop. This is not. This is not. So if a society doesn't do that, so they've already sort of accepted this type of thing. Discourse is there. So that's one danger. And the second, the proliferation of hate material and creative propaganda. Okay, so that is I have kept track of cartoons especially. So some of these cartoons are extremely well designed, and I'm amazed at how creative energy it's. So if you so far I mean I look at a cartoon from here from Tamil, and I looked at a cartoon from I think Telugu. It was so amateurish. But here it was very what do you call it, inducing some kind of a biological reaction in you. It was that what do you call it, disgust. So it evokes a disgust sensitivity in you. This is another of Jordan Peterson's things that I really like, the importance of disgust sensitivity. So if you portray people, even Muslims, like I really cringe when people draw these cartoons of of any group which evokes or provokes a disgust sensitivity. So these are some of the signs that you have to watch out for. Okay, so yeah, and just like one of the drawbacks is once you go down this path, all problems of society, all laws, all policies, you can stop
Mhm.
debate. You can
Debate.
completely stop debate, because if you can say, oh, you are a Brahmin, that's why you don't like this. So there's nothing more to talk. So
That's
my
right.
or if you're not a Brahmin, all right, they will say that you are a slave. Adime அப்படிம்பாங்க தமிழ்ல. So adime, I mean slave. So which means you are either with us or you're with them. So there's no policy. Your ideas don't matter, right? Whatever your ideas don't matter. So this is the free speech issue here. So no one's really the ideas don't matter. So if you're with them, you're wrong, right? And we decide if you're with them. So this type of a it's a tragedy that it's come to this. And since you asked about spreading to other places, it's greatly really unfortunate that it looks like the Congress. I've been watching it for a long time. They are really, I think, falling into this because they
Correct.
maybe election losses, and they don't have a coherent ideology, and they sort of follow the winning model. So it's no question that this is a winning model. It was not just now; it was a winning model during the 1930s in Germany. So if you go hard against a group, you will have a consolidating effect on the others. It could be based on fear that you could also be in that position. So, or it could be based on various other factors. But going hard on a is a winning a thing that is checked only by criminal application of proper criminal laws, and most importantly by free speech. So free
Correct.
speech, propaganda can only be defeated by counter propaganda, and that is where free speech comes in.
Vivek, the next question, okay, that I want to kind of, maybe like one follow up question to a point that you made, and then I want to kind of look at how do we, the response and, then probably your closing remarks. So, this question that you spoke about, like one aspect of uh, even like my own, I mean, I've been away from Tamil Nadu for like almost now 20 years, but I have some memories of growing up there and all that. One constant theme, okay, which kind of resonates among like even otherwise well-meaning people who are not really into the Dravidian ideology and all, is about this. ritualistic equality that you spoke about, actually I find it very, I don't know, like what should be the response to that like say, even if you take a extremely wealthy, affluent, let's say even a most powerful person in Tamil Nadu from the ruling family, for whom, I would think that the temples would open 24/7 and they would ensure access and all. Even some person like him would be constantly bemoaning that, like, I don't have access to the sanctum sanctorum. That temple is almost seen like that ultimate place where there is no spiritual democracy, though there are so much nuances in this, I understand. But this is somehow been kind of, like, I mean, of course there are other factors which the Dravidian discourse focuses on, but this has been something which even appeals to dharmic Hindus, let me put, who are kind of, not into the Dravidian ideology, but seem to be like thinking that, okay, this is a fair point. And you also seem to be acknowledging that that's a valid, issue that they are raising. So, like, is there a way that, I mean, I would really not think that this is something which is worth so much
Yes,
divisiveness, right? Actually, for particular
yes,
a
yes.
tiny community, I don't think so. Like anybody, even within the Brahmins, are really very happy doing a poor paying priest job. And this also kind of, I'll just conclude. I mean, just conclude this question by also this disproportionate focus on this Chidambaram also kind of temple, right? Also, I mean, I've kind of had the opportunity to listen to some of the YouTubers on the Chidambaram. It's like I really think that, like, is that a issue worth fighting, and can we, what do you think would be some way forward on this actually?
Okay, this is a sort of a deep question, and I'd be delighted to do a separate podcast on
Okay,
this.
we do it separately, but broadly, if you can
My,
think like this agitates their mind.
broadly, I think the issue is such issues. These are whether they're valid or not, and how they can be accomplished. These should ride on a movement of good faith and harmony. Okay,
Correct.
so they should not. They cannot be built on abuse and obscenity of the religion. So you now, if somebody is calling your religion obscene, is just heaping abuse and abuse on it, and then that person says, "I want this such and such reform." I think that is a problem. So what is so the problem? The issue, if there was really good faith, I don't think there's any restriction or any major issue here. I think you can this can be solved easily. But if it's solved easily, then you lose the pretext of going after the of the Brahmin. So anti-Brahminism is not really dependent on these problems being solved. So that is the primary phenomenon is not these these valid demands, right? So I call it valid demands, but it's the primary phenomenon is anti-Brahminism. So that's the main thing. So because if you there are so many options, and if you come with a good faith, and if you're riding already a tradition of maybe 40 or 50 years of serving a particular deity, and if you're already in that tradition and you're not hostile to that tradition, I don't think there's going to be a major issue. These are problems that you should be able to solve with dialogue and good faith
Correct.
effort in the 21st century. But that's not the case. So what I'm seeing is a very vile comment, and there are accounts that are dedicated to spreading obscenity, injecting obscenity into the Tamil Hindu tradition, right? So those indicate a lack of good faith, and those indicate a hostile attitude. So we need to confront that first, and then look into these issues.
Correct. So, from a response perspective, Vivek, that I probably we are coming towards the last two questions that I want to ask you is, how do you think can this Dravidian ideology? I'm not talking about, like, say, politically. That's a different thing. So, what should be the response? You think it is a more response as a more broad-based Hindu response to this hate, or you think uh, like maybe the response should be more, say, a community driven actually, though, like, then you lose the danger of uh, uh, getting the goodwill of people outside also, who might kind of share the share the antipathy against what the Dravidian movement is doing. So how do you think will be the best way to mount a response to this actually without, you know, victim mode or like say a way in which all people are going to listen to this and fight this hate together.
Oh, that's a tough. I'm not into like responses, but basically I'm into the discourse analysis. One
Okay.
of the ways I think I suggest one of the I wish this would happen is the foundation of this response is free speech. All right, so I should be able to like I've done on this podcast, I should be able to air these views without fear of a hurt of my personal self, my family, or a state vendetta against me or people like me. So I expect the same to be granted to all other groups, right? So we should. I just wish that people, irrespective of what caste or whatever, they can come together and form a team that is agreeing, first of all, to engage with issues and not with identity, right? Even though the identity may play a part in the issue, so the primarily the issue should be identity, should be identity free issue talking, right? So if you have an issue, say, of what you just mentioned, then it should be like, okay, what is this person saying rather than who he is, right? And then you dismiss it outright. So that layer of intellectualism, I think from what I've observed in Tamil social media and Tamil YouTube, and I think it's extremely unlikely. So that's something that, maybe if people like so free speech is the foundation of this space, is what is my answer to this. So we are at a very early stage, so these problems can be solved easily using the 20 in this 21st century, 2023. And if you're still talking about, some demands that are like completely reasonably able to solve in the framework of harmony and friendship, and you laugh and solve these problems rather than hate and spreading memes and vile, obscene, anti-women. Just the nastiness layer has to be removed, and the precondition for any of this is the larger Tamil society rejects outright that this is not the way forward. So that would be the starting point. I don't know how it will end, but the starting point is improvement in the discourse quality and rejection of these obscenity and this abuse. So that's let's start there, and we'll see what happens.
No, actually, yeah, you brought a good point. Like for instance, I remember, like, I think probably almost a few months back, I think like there was this financial journalist. I don't think so. She's anything ideological or political, and I think she just made a put a tweet based on a discussion with someone in Chennai about like the dubious real estate deals or something like that, which I've seen like hundreds of people across the political spectrum, across ideology, also saying. But then the then finance minister gets triggered on that particular tweet and links it to the identity. So like when the
Yes.
discourse is at that level is where there is no opportunity to
Oh,
graduate to the next stage to have a meaningful conversation, right? Like I mean, I can't really think of this happening in any other state. I mean, I'm not saying like others are like some paragon of or some kind of a paradise and all. There are definitely divisive issues there and all, but this kind of trigger over like it's basically in the flow chart. The first thing is, are you a B or a non-B, and then the response gets shaped, which is a, thing. So
yeah.
will
I see. My take on that is, I think we're running a bit long here. I'll just one
sure,
quick
sure, go
thing.
ahead. I want to, yeah, yeah, sure.
This type of actually one of the claims is that propaganda only is a victimless crime, right? So there's nothing, we're just talking bad about you, you're not really dying, what do you care? And I keep hearing this, and one of the things is, just ignore it, you're doing fine. But propaganda is not a victimless crime, because it has two things. One is they're speaking at the Brahmins, but they're speaking for the others, right? So they're speaking for you. So this propaganda is speaking for you. So that itself should alert you and say, "Don't speak for me. I'm not like that." But it's not the case here. So they sort of absorb this propaganda, and when you bait a journalist, for some kind of a political statement on her caste, and this I've already also seen in the very vile case of the Nuliban. That was the
Hmm.
portmanteau that they did.
Even I think I noticed in some that minister's quote also thread within quotes and all whatever he
Yes.
meant. I don't know, like thread, holy thread or whatever, like which is
So I think, yeah,
very much.
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. This is not seen in other states, to be honest, and I really fear that this could. And even in Tamil, I don't think it's seen in face-to-face interactions, right? I don't
Correct.
think, but it's so prevalent in political, the higher circles, and in the social media, and yeah, it's a tragedy. That's the effect of propaganda. So you sort of lower the discourse, and you try to park everything in that abuse pile. So if somebody's saying something about corruption, you just call them a null, even if that's not the case. It's an accusation that they have to dig themselves out of. So that's a tragic consequence of having this type of consistent propaganda. So
Mhm.
yeah, hopefully,
Correct.
hopefully
So,
we stop this.
Vivek, from a community perspective, I don't know. Like, I mean, I also don't really. Uh, I mean, how do I ask you this? Is that like, what would be the response of the affected community here? You think like
Yes, yes,
one
there
way,
should
one
there.
way is just one way is just like just keep ignoring. Maybe it's I mean, I don't think so. It's really a fringe social media phenomenon and all that. It's far more mainstream. So just keep ignoring and do what get on with life. Actually, just shut it out. I mean, just get dissolved in the daily life and go ahead with it, or any kind of organized legal response, or what do you think, like, because again, like, if you make it very political, like, you kind of play into that stereotype of what they I mean, the Dravidian stereotype. You play into the Dravidian stereotype, see, like, political organization is happening of this community and all that stuff. So what do you think would be a very I mean, optimal response, let me put it that way, actually.
So, okay, first of all, the impact of this propaganda on the community, which I know firsthand, is it's driving a sense of funk. A funk means a sense of dejection and
Correct.
a very gloomy outlook, right? So, a lot of this material on YouTube is completely unprovoked, right? So there is they actually try to find something. There was a mimicry artist who who is completely a miracle for me that somebody would be so passionate in the 21st century to have a career out of making fun of accent and just like spreading some. I think it's just very cheap and distasteful, and I don't
Correct.
think any other society has it. And even in India, even this, I don't think I'm just for example, okay, you would not you would we would all take notice if somebody was such a popular figure and promoted by the top media who would make fun of let's say the Muslim accent, right, or the Christian accent, whatever it is, or the Telugu accent or whatever. So you don't make fun of that, and then you would get noticed. But here, that is like a funny thing. So that's the effect of this type of propaganda. So these are counter dark things that's recognized as dark outside, but it's not recognized as dark in the Tamil sphere. So this drives a sense of funk and very unfortunate dejection in the community. So I don't think this should be ignored. The reason is, even if you ignore it, the propaganda is so prevalent that the children of you can shield your children from this propaganda, but the children of those who are not shielded, right? So they would grow up with very bad attitudes and very stereotypical and hateful attitudes. And this is and when your kids grow up, they would come into this social contact with these who are having this kind of attitude, and that would be a very miserable experience because it would be the hate would be unexplained, right? Like, what did I do? Why was that comment on me like that? That type of thing would appear. So ignoring is not an option. One option I think is politically. I don't think it's an option because the propaganda has ensured the stigma on the community, right? Which is why even the BJP is a little bit wary of incorporating too many Brahmins, because you have to first unroll that stigma. Only then you can participate. So you have to dig yourself out, and only then you are equal to, let's say, another caste. Like, you can take any other caste in Tamil Nadu. I don't want to name them; they'll be like thin skin. But they don't have the stigma, so they are able to participate. But if you have a stigma, you have to unroll that stigma, and then only then you can participate. So that is one thing you have to do. Practically, one thing I want to do is to establish a repository or a chronicle. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, somewhat like the Anti Defamation League, but let's say Anti Defamation Forum, whatever it is. So to just record it, to just record what's happening, because my contribution on social media is to record these things, and my purpose of discourse is to find out what if I'm missing something valid, right? So if I go against Dravidian without reading, I read everything, and I don't think there's much beyond a few valid claims, grievances.
Claims.
So there's nothing much there. So I record, and but discourses, I record the abuse I see on the timeline. So we need to have a permanent portal or something for that, like that, and then maybe use that to record these things. So that's the bare minimum we should do, because an outsider, when we tell when he looks, can you give me some examples of this? And we don't even have a proper response to that. It's just there's no chronicle. So I'm a great fan of the model of the Anti Defamation League. So they have a website. They record these tropes and various slurs and sightings of anti-Semitic content, and people can. So this is something that is practical. Politically, actually, I don't. I'm not a
Yeah.
big political power. See, Indians are in all places, Singapore and Malaysia and Middle East. They don't have political power, but they're happy. So until the stigma is removed, I don't really think that political power is something that we should go for. So at least in the
No,
state.
I,
So maybe
no, I didn't mean like political power, meaning not like a identity only party and all. But I'm just saying that like politically, meaning like you engage with the uh, political parties on this particular.
yes, yes, yes. See, yeah, of course. So we have to appreciate the political parties that are supporting and are working towards civilizing the type of
Correct.
discourse. I'm going to be open about it. I think Annamalai is doing that. All right. So it's not a question of we have to select somebody who's able to at least, even though there's no we don't deserve my view is, until we dig out, we don't deserve a political representation, because our primary goal is to unroll the stigma, right? But Annamalai is actually voicing out some of the concerns. I think that's a step. So I think that's a no-brainer. I don't think the others are really modernizing. But I should add, I in my interactions with the DMK, I do think there are some elements of modernity inside of that. Okay,
Correct.
but so those people have to really think hard about what they're doing. This is the moment of glory, right? So they have a mandate, and why are they letting this type of vile content by these unknown, like very cheap people ruin the discourse? So they don't have to do this. So, but it's up to them. If they find this is the source of a power or energy, then it's tragic. But yeah, there are not all are not in this. That's my understanding. But they may be quiet, or they may be afraid. So that's up to them. I don't have much more insight. I'm not an expert on the internal politics. If you see,
Politics.
rarely, if ever,
Correct. That,
politics. So I don't care about the Penn Memorial or it's their thing. They have the mandate, so it's their right to build any memorial, any libraries. I don't even comment on bribery. The minister got arrested. I don't really bother about it. So I'm apolitical. I'm more of a discourse analyst, or
analysis.
one level deeper than that. So yeah, in short, I think this
No, actually, yeah, I think that's a very important point that you made. That, for instance, whoever the minister who got arrested, that was basically on a complaint of, I think, like the DMK in its previous avatar. I saw some YouTubes linking that also to the Brahminical stuff here, because it's, I mean, he's served across all parties. The complaint is from one party to, I mean, whatever, like, so that sometimes, the choice of being apolitical is also very difficult when you
I'm
kind
not, I'm
of.
not, I'm not advocating this for anyone, because being political is a part of a citizen's job. Right? I'm just saying
Correct.
for my
Agree.
my type. So I'm
Correct.
not. I have a more fundamental view of things. So, but
Correct.
I think others should be political. They should participate in political things. And, that's healthy. That's healthy democracy. So, yeah.
Sure, sure. So Vivek, I think like we should do a multi-part series moving forward on each of these dimensions. It's a very a lot of things to unpack. So maybe this is probably the first of our several discussions that we should be doing moving forward. So any closing thoughts on this, and then we can wrap it up. You know,
Yeah. So for closing thoughts, thanks for having me on the show. First of all, guys. Yeah, I would be happy to do shows on this. So yeah, it feels good to be outside because of the issue I told about the split personality. I think so. It's good to be in this avatar, so I can share my thoughts to a wider audience. Yeah, I'd like to do that. The closing thoughts is my appeal to the ruling political economy
Party.
of Tamil Nadu is to somehow snap out of this. So so you have to end the cycle of this repeating this hatred, even when at the same time you are boasting of a clean, cleansed, 100% cleansed assembly, which means that this is the first assembly where there are no Brahmins. So you can't have that, and you cannot maintain a very virulent and very volatile attack on Brahmins at the same time. So one of the things was, why do you why did you dig up old stuff? So I keep getting this on Twitter by some of the Dravidian apologists. So, yeah, these are 40, 50 years old. Why are you taking up these
Yeah.
things? But the issue was, those are used to this day. So those are live wire issues. So if they were just lying, I'd be happy. So okay, those days, there was a difference. Maybe this rhetoric was needed, but it's the no, you can't. You're repeating on this day. So hence, we have no choice but to respond to that. Otherwise, they will stick. So I appeal to the civil society of Tamil Nadu to really snap out of this. This is not the right type of dialogue. This is not the right type of content to have on YouTube. Just talk issues. Just be more civilized and let's talk issues. So that's my main thing. இது தமிழ்லயே பண்ணலாம். So even I'm planning to
Yeah, I think,
talk.
yeah, I think
So
that's also a critical,
so
uh, you know,
it's just completely anachronistic. It's a pre-modern type of discourse we're having, and it's time to stop now. So and I appeal to some of the sensible people in the DMK to help out with this. So that those are my closing thoughts.
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Vivek. It was my pleasure and privilege to listen to you. First of all, at a personal level, been a great fan of your work. Starting from your days of blogging and then your core agenda. Of course, I know core agenda is when the rubber hits the road, as they say, when it meets the political realities, it becomes challenging. And then of course your recent focus, whatever you've done it with exemplary focus, and you've really elevated the quality of the discourse actually. So I mean, of course, you describe yourself as a discourse analyst. So I mean, but thank you so much, and I look forward to hosting you for multiple sessions, Vivek. Thank you so much.